Hello, and welcome to A Deadly Silence. I'm your host, Larry Curtis, and today's show is dedicated in the memory of both Lance Fisk, who passed away at the age of 23 on August 23rd of 2009, and Robert May, who passed at the age of 21 on May 23rd, 2008. I'm proud to introduce for our guest this evening from the town of Brockton, State Senator Tom Kennedy. Tom, welcome to the show. From Quincy, Massachusetts, State Senator John Keenan. Senator Keenan, welcome to our show.
Thank you.
And again from Brockton, State Representative Michael Brady. Michael,
Larry.
welcome to our show. Our show primarily is an educational and awareness program that we're trying to promote what is happening in relationship to alcohol and drug addiction problems that are not only here in the city of Brockton, but also throughout our South Shore community. So what I'd like to do is start with a couple of comments. In November of 2009, the Commonwealth published its recommendations of the OxyContin and Heroin Commission, which Senator Tolman was chairman of. In the summary of its recommendations, it was identified that substance abuse affects each individual differently, and there is no single solution to ending the opiate addiction in the Commonwealth. I would be interested to know, Senator Keenan, from your perspective, what are you hearing from your constituents as it relates to the opiate addiction?
Well, it's probably the same that everybody's hearing. It is a problem that just seems to be growing, and it's clearly at the stage where it's an epidemic. And it is a problem, as people say, that it doesn't strike any one demographic. It is striking across the board. It is something that is ripping families apart. Parents are struggling with dealing with the addiction problems of their children, and sometimes children are dealing with the addiction problems of their parents as well. So it is just a devastating epidemic. It has been quiet, it has been somewhat silent, but with programs like this, I think it's important that we get the word out that it is a problem and that everybody has to be involved in order to solve the problem.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy.
Clearly, it's a crisis. It's a crisis not only in the city of Brockton and perhaps in the city of Quincy, but it's a crisis in all of our communities across the Commonwealth and really getting to come across the nation. Prescription drugs are dangerous, extremely dangerous. Dangerous in the wrong hands for the wrong purpose. And it's far too easy to acquire these medications, and they're far too widespread, and they're affordable. Sort of it's a cheap investment for folks, young folks and not so young folks, to get a quick high and to be easily and almost instantaneously addicted to a life-threatening level that we've all heard the tragic tales about.
Representative Brady.
Thank you, Larry. And this is an epidemic across the country, not just the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it's called the silent killer because families were embarrassed to talk about it. Nobody wanted to deal with it. Nobody wanted to bring it to the forefront. It's affected very affluent communities such as Easton, a lot of towns around the city of Brockton, and obviously these cities like Brockton and Quincy, et cetera. But I think it's good that you've had this program on. Thank you to the staff and all the people who put this together. Finally getting the word out. I know there's programs out there such as Learn to Cope, and educating the public about this is so crucial to get the word out so we can pass the legislation at the state level, and the local level, and the federal level to get these issues addressed.
Well, it is an important issue, and I think, as Senator Keenan referred to, is that, it's been too silent, and, I think that many of us who identify with loved ones, family members, or friends who have an addiction issue really feel like we're suffering in silence to a certain extent, and we need to open up that silence and make it aware that you don't need to suffer, that there is help out there for the families. As part of some of the key issues from our executive summary, it was identified that between 2002 and 2007, 3,265 Massachusetts residents died of an opiate-related overdose. That's basically almost 2 residents per day in the Commonwealth. What efforts are you seeing that it might have been taking to identify and help maybe turn that trend backwards, around? We'll start with Representative Brady.
Well, some of the things that we talked about, educating the public, is the first crucial part, whether it be in the schools, whether shows like this, and also we have to work on passing stronger legislation. There's twofold things going on. You want to prosecute the drug dealers out there who are pushing it on the street. We had a doctor down in Osterville writing prescriptions for OxyContin. He finally was found guilty because he got all these young people addicted, and it wasn't, OxyContin is needed for the cancer patients who have, terminal illness, but not for people who have no need for it. And it's given out at parties, and then the OxyContin becomes so expensive they turn to heroin. Heroin is cheaper than it ever was before. It's so plentiful out there. It's less than a case of beer or a pack of cigarettes, and it's such a scary situation for our young people. So I think we have to continue to work on passing strong legislation to help get these drug deals off the street, and then helping the young people that might have went to a party one night, try the OxyContin. They come from a very nice family. They end up switching to heroin to fill that need, and it's such a tragic epidemic. And we've passed laws that if they're found with a minuscule situation on a drug, that they're a good, decent person who made a stupid mistake, they're going to be able to get back into society so they can get back to work.
Thank you. Senator Keenan.
Yeah, I agree with Representative Brady. We do have to have tough standards on the criminal justice side for those who deal in narcotics. And we also have to do whatever we can for those who are now addicted, and we have to do that by way of recovery programs. We have to make getting into a detox easier, going from a detox to a step-down program, which right now is very difficult. We have to make that easier. We have to make sure that there are appropriate inpatient programs for individuals, as well as outpatient community-based programs for individuals who are addicted. And that is something that's continuing. That's where a lot of the state funding presently goes to. We'll be introducing legislation in the fall that will look to make kind of a preemptive strike against prescription painkiller addiction. And what we're hoping to do is introduce legislation that will limit the number of pills that are out there. You hear the stories about how kids nowadays are getting hooked on this. They're getting it from a friend at a party, and that friend may have gotten it from a medicine chest, from a grandparent, from a parent, from a sister or a brother. Generally all legally prescribed, or prescribed by a physician perhaps illegally, but nonetheless prescribed. That's their first exposure. So we're looking to limit the number of pills that are being prescribed.
So instead of a pill that has, a prescription that might have 30, 40 pills in the one-time fill or multiple refills, lowering the number, particularly if it's an opiate type of a
Correct.
of a
Right
drug.
now under law there can be a 30-day prescription and there can be 3 successive up to 90 days. We'd be looking to limit it for dentists, for instance, for emergency room physicians, to as little as 2 days, and then requiring people to go to their primary care physician. And some of the feedback we have from the emergency room physicians is that they feel a little bit of relief, that they don't have to make that difficult judgment call as to whether somebody's playing them, for instance, to get these pills, that they can give a 2-day supply and say, go see your primary care physician after that, or go see your orthopedic or whatever the case may be.
Thank you. Senator Kennedy.
Yeah, I'll echo that very same argument. It's far too easy for a dentist, and very well intended, when you have dental surgery, dental work, the pain can be excruciating. But if you're not in need for that relief, if the pain subsides quickly, you have those extra pills in your house and at your disposal, and it's too easy for people to come in just using your facilities as a neighbor or a friend, and they go through your cupboard, they find it and they scoop it, or family members taking advantage of your goodwill and your good intentions, taking it and either selling it to their friends and colleagues or using it themselves. It's far too easy for that to happen. It's incumbent upon us as lawmakers to put a lid on that and to scrutinize the access far stricter than it is right now.
Thank you. As I was reading through the Commission's report, one of the startling aspects came out. It was really the amount of dollars that are being spent that as a percentage of the state budget. And in 2005, it had identified that 21.8% of the total state budget was spent on substance abuse and addiction-related programs. And of that number, 5.3% was spent in the justice system alone, at a cost of just under $1.1 billion. With continued reductions to the state budget, what will be the anticipated impact on existing substance abuse and addiction programs, and what steps are you looking at to take to generate more revenue? And let's not forget, we just lost the revenue from the alcohol tax. I believe the voters put that down, and those dollars were I understand, directed to the addiction substance abuse programs. Right. Senator Kennedy.
Well, they were. That was a brilliant stroke of genius, heavily supported and authored by our good and dear friend in the Senate and our legislative colleague, the one and only and excellent Senator Stephen Tolman. He is the guru of this particular subject matter and a crusader of sterling qualities. He would be here tonight, and was intended to be here tonight, but again, he's being pulled all across the Commonwealth as a herald for the importance of the subject matter that you're addressing in this program, and the crusade that he has spearheaded to bring attention and funding for addressing the chronic situation. So he put together the appropriation, tapping small relief in the tax exemption for alcohol to be singly earmarked and dedicated for substance abuse and treatment. It was about $140 million. Again, pipeline right to the source of therapy and curing folks of this horrible ailment. It worked marvelously. It relieved the budget from that appropriation, and it was going to be do yeoman's work in solving some of the problems. Unfortunately, it was addressed by a ballot repeal, and it was so voted on the referendum that money's been lost. So that's a huge hit to the bottom line of our budget at a time that we could least afford it. Because our revenues are gradually inching up, we might be able to plug that hole with, thankfully, additional monies. But we're not going to find the money sufficient to address the problem at the level that we'd like to. Yeah. And it's a matter of stretching that dollar
so it's
further.
It's the resources that, limited resources, and where can we best prioritize those resources moving forward?
And we have to.
Right.
And we have to be vigilant in beating the drum,
Thank
the
you.
importance of this subject matter.
Senator King.
No, it was a difficult loss, that funding. A lot of that has been made up. The governor was very good in the introduction of his budget, and then the Senate budget and the House budget. Both sides did what they could to get that revenue number back up, or those funds allocated to substance abuse programs. They're very, very expensive. And the cost that you reference, just treatment cost and treatment within the correction system, it doesn't even get into the cost that we have in our courts. We're probably 80 to 90% of those who are in the courts on things like larceny charges and possession charges are there because of substance abuse problems. So that's a huge cost. And with declining revenues in the past, as they improve, we're going to hope to allocate more to substance abuse recovery treatment programs. But again, I go back to the idea if we can do something on the prevention side cost effectively. Mm-hmm. For instance, one of the other ideas that we're looking at, and Representative Brady touched on it, was education within the schools. So that when a child, before going on to high school, for instance, that child and a parent or guardian has to go to and attend a required course. As a parent, I have to go to a driver's ed course for my child, and yet the dangers of substance abuse and prescription painkillers are all that much greater, I think, than what goes on in the car. They're a little more insidious, in fact. So I think we can do those types of things. And then also one of the things we can do pretty cost effectively is warning labels on prescriptions. You get a prescription now, and it'll tell you that prescription may cause nausea, headache, dizziness, whatever, very small print. We've met with the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, and we're going to work with them so that you get something bold, clear, telling you this is dangerous, it is highly addictive, keep out of the reach of people other than those for whom it's intended, and to advise people you don't have to use every one of these, please consult your physician, and then also including language as to what they can do to dispose of those pills when they're done. And if we can prevent people from getting addicted through the painkiller process, hopefully we will keep them obviously from progressing to heroin and all the problems that causes.
Thank you. Mike.
And it was mentioned that elimination of that revenue was a drastic hit to our Commonwealth. 2.5 cents on the dollar. You'd have to spend $100 to spend $2.50 or $2.05 on the tax. you know, somebody goes to a Dunkin' Donuts, they leave the change, it's like 50 cents, whatever, they don't even think of it. Yet they were complaining about that, and that revenue went directly for prevention. And it's so crucial that preventive medicine is the key. The cost, as the Senator mentioned, is through the court systems. They're overburdened as they stand now. They're looking at closing some of the courts in Plymouth County, and they're overburdened, and then the cost of housing somebody in a correctional facility, it's just outrageous when we can do the preventive medicine and stop it at the source, because we have to stop the addictions, not keep locking these young people up.
Okay. That kind of, I think, Senator Keene, you touched on an important issue when we talk about the children and the getting into the schools. You know, one of the recommendations that put forth in the study was that the state continue to support the recovery high schools by increasing the number of recovery high schools throughout the Commonwealth, and hopefully through more funding and strong legislative support. Here in the South Shore, there has been a lot of talk over the last year, year and a half, of somehow securing a recovery high school here on the South Shore, potentially in Brockton itself. Where is that within the legislature right now?
Well, as recently as today, we were in touch with the Bureau of Substance Abuse Services, and they are reviewing the RFP still. The school is looking for some funding, any source of funding that it can get to help it get going so that it can start in this January. It can't make the commitments it needs to make to the professionals, the staff professionals, without some funding. They've done a great job of identifying funding, getting some funding, but there is a need for additional funding. Recovery high schools that started throughout the state got $250,000 as kind of startup money, and that has not been made available yet to this region. And we're looking to see if we can get some allocation. The explanation that I got as to why it hasn't been allocated is that the time the other three started, they were new concepts, they were new ideas, and therefore the funding was put in place because they were starting basically at the same time. It's no longer a new concept or a new idea, but I think the need for funding is just as great, and it's very important to this region. And I think it's a great program. I think the partnership that it will have with Massasoit is a great part of the program. It'll give that continuum for students to have them graduate from high school and then transfer immediately into a college setting and not interrupt their educational process. So I think it's a great concept, a great idea, and people have done a great job with it, and we're going to do what we can to get whatever funding we can.
As a follow-up, Senator Kennedy, I know that locally here we have school committee member Bill Carpenter, who has been greatly involved in this process of trying to take charge and bring this opportunity of a recovery high school. What have you heard from Bill in general? Yeah.
My recent conversation with Bill is that they have looked at several sites here in Brockton. Again, they need one that's ideal for the students and the clientele that's going to use that. They don't want to be in the mixture of the massive crowd at the high school, Brockton High, with 4,500 students. You can't be back in the population when you're in a fragile state, as those kids are with recovery. So